introduce you tomorrow, and this is version 900 something or other of these meetings we're having here at this room since 1999. We have been doing a lot of work in the past few years. My son Jay really did this work, looking at the region to see where all the jobs are and to see how things really look. And it's a very different picture than most of us have, I think. Recently, we updated all that with new data from the Houston-Galveston Area Council showing the top 25 job centers. And so that's sort of what we're going to look at today, but more. It's going to have all these little build things go on, I guess. So last month, how many of you were here last month when Sam Watt did just a few? So Sam Watt is doing it. He's been going around town doing a presentation on Houston's pending transportation crisis. And he did that last week here. Basically, he's saying that the freeways and the managed lanes will operate in failure mode for most of the day, pretty soon. And that there's nothing we're planning to do to the freeways that are going to deal with provide capacity, adequate capacity. And that the traffic will begin to move out into the city streets, causing congestion pretty much everywhere.
How does a managed lane have failure mode?
They can't add more. In other words, you keep the flow the same.
Okay, so it's still flowing. Okay.
Yeah, they're still flowing, of course. By that time, it's $30 an hour or something. You know.
Right.
And he makes the case that most of the density of employment is still going to be what he calls the urban core. I'll show you that in a minute. But that most of the new people are going to live in what he calls the suburbs. And this all seems like a little bit vague to me. So we're going to talk about it. But this is what he calls the urban core, and I think it's a very good definition, because if you look at downtown Houston, Medical Center, Greenway, Uptown Plaza, you're talking about huge numbers of jobs. And if there was some faster way to connect them, it would become a zone, a big business zone, I think. So he's talking about the idea of having connectors, circulators within them that are automated people movers, and then express connections among them as the solution to how to get around, how to get from one part of the core to the other part of the core, and then driving from out here somewhere, to this, you can then move around with it. This, it's a dream. I mean, I agree with this concept. I kind of doubt we'll wake up and do it. However,
excuse me, can we turn off the overhead light?
yes. Thank you.
Fades out the video.
And then for the sort of long distance stuff, he says that commuter rail is the fundamental solution to our freeway capacity, and that this would be a system like this on existing railroad freight tracks mostly, using what we think of as like train, big locomotives with lots of cars behind. So when you look at the last census, the 2010 census for a decade, you find out that 81% of all the jobs are in the towns and cities, most of them in Houston, the city of Houston. Only 20% are out, less than 20% are out in the unincorporated area of the counties. And our studies suggest that isn't going to really change. By 2040, the numbers are so close, the market share is so close to what they are today that you can say it's the same. And this idea of urban cores, these core places, activity centers like downtown and uptown and so forth, being the economic engines of the whole region. And I think, I may misspeak here, but the Great Houston Partnership looked at what are the things that drive our economy, and they were expecting to find out it was the port and NASA and the medical center. And those turned out to be, if I use the word trivial, I may be overstating it, but those weren't really what's driving things. So the question is, what is? And I think it's these many places where there are lots of jobs focused. So, and then Craig Logan, who gave this talk some time ago here in Houston, makes the case that these are the high-paying jobs, and the thing that happens to them, that you want to keep growing those places because of that. And what happens is they get clogged up. Like Uptown Gallery is fair to say, it's pretty much clogged up, certainly up around Christmas, you know. You can't have more transactions happening in there than are happening right now, as everybody tries to arrive by car and park. And so the trick is you need to increase the density in the cores, you have to really do something that increases connectivity. So when you look at this one, this is Uptown, you see these long areas where there's no streets, you know, there's no crosses, and they are working on that to get more intersections, and so you can have choices to move around. So this is our map. This is Jay's map of, actually, he did the GIS stuff, and then I took them into Photoshop and did color and stuff, you know, so move around with them. This is where the top 25 job centers are in the whole region. And these circles, these green circles are a 5-mile radius, and the orange or whatever, a 10-mile radius, and the purple's about a 15-mile radius from those centers. And when you kind of get into the data, you find, one, that everything, all these things except for the Woodlands and Clear Lake and Galveston are in Harris County. Well, I guess that is too, yeah. So the only thing that's not in Harris County is the Woodlands and Galveston. And then at, say, 10 miles, this sort of orange area, you're talking about 71% of all the residents in the 13-county area live inside that orange space, orange and green. 85% of all the jobs on 10% of the land area. When you get out to 15 miles, you're pretty much talking about that's the region. I mean, you know, for practical purposes. And by the way, just incidentally, the densest area is right here. That's the densest area in Texas, too, down in the southwest part, with 8,000 people per square mile. Almost twice as much as the city generally.
Is that the residence density?
Just residents. Just residents. And we're doing some work now on what you call activity intensity, where you add the population and the jobs in the space, because that's the people who are there during the day, and the numbers are getting pretty high around these places.
David, some of those job centers that were on the map that Jay did previously are not there now.
Yeah, right, that's true.
U of A, Hobby.
Right. Up here, especially up on 1960 and 6, 4 or 5 job centers fell off, not because they lost jobs, but because other places gained so many jobs. So they were replaced by other places. Galveston, for instance, wasn't on last time.
Ford is not on there.
Port is never on there. It's not a big job center relative to these other places.
David,
Yes.
well, what is the dark orange?
Here?
Go down.
The center.
In the center.
Oh, sorry. So, yeah, I'm so used to looking at that. Okay, so that's downtown. That's the biggest one. This is the Medical Center, Greenway Plaza, Uptown. That's the Loop. That's the Beltway. That's 6. So I'm sorry. I know if I put a map, an outline of Harris County up there, like 80% of the people wouldn't know what it was, I'm sure. But, so
Is
thank you
Greenway
for
Plaza
asking.
still bigger than most of those other ones?
What's that?
Is Greenway Plaza still bigger than, say, the Energy Corridor or West Park or?
It is, and it has another interesting characteristic, which is that it is the hottest place in the whole region in terms, because to go out from its circle, it contains downtown and uptown. So whatever you mean by all that.
Right.
So it's sort of the focus, but you know, the jobs are moving obviously to the west.
David, I think the Exxon campus at Grand Parkway and I-45 is going to be another one that needs to be on.
It'll be a long time though. It's like 10,000 jobs compared to the number 25.
Not just Exxon jobs.
Well, I know, but when they come, you're right, that's right. But number 25 on the list is the corner of South Rice and Bissonnet, you know, just in the middle of Bel Air. And that's 16,000 jobs and Exxon 10. But maybe they will appear on the map, but right now it's So that's the metro service area, which is another interesting aspect of this, which is that, again, everything except the Woodlands and Galveston is inside the metro service area. So if you're thinking about providing transit, we already have the agency for almost all the jobs in the region. This is the city of Houston. So again, the same thing. Everything except the Woodlands and Galveston is inside the city of Houston. So if you're looking for a political entity to do something, you only need one. And this is just for fun, that's New York City, which I'm starting to look at compared to the green space, which we call the urban zone, which includes this, but later you'll see that there's a sort of core urban zone as opposed to just the urban zone or just the urban core. And it's pretty interesting, you know, that all that kind of stuff fits inside New York City pretty handily, although we're talking about massive differences in population density, of course. But just the green areas is, you know, higher than this, moving up. So this is our light rail system that we have now, and that we probably won't improve for a pretty long time. So that's kind of it, and it connects these two job centers together, and these are still out of it. This is the commuter rail plan, the base plan, the first round of it. And the idea is that it would be, and this is HJC's plan. And by the way, Sam Lott, who couldn't be here today because he's out of town, and we'll continue this conversation with him later, but his company, Kimley Horn, conducted this survey, this original commuter rail plan. So he really thinks it's the right thing to do. But you know, it doesn't get to most of the job centers. It just doesn't touch them. And it's because the rail lines, the old freight rail lines, are where they are. They all went downtown. And that's what you would be trying to use. The study suggested it would have about 41,000 boardings a day, which is approximately what the Main Street line does right now. And it's 7 miles long, and this is $3 billion. So the efficiency of this idea is not very good, to say the least, compared to almost 10 times as much as the Main Street line to produce the same number of riders.
David?
Yes.
Isn't the existing park and ride service also somewhere in that $40,000 to $45,000 passenger?
Well, the park and ride service gets eliminated to do this. And I'm not sure, I wish Christoph was here, that we may be actually getting fewer riders on the commuter rail than we're now getting on the park and ride. But I'm not sure about that. That may be the whole park and ride system.
You're about right there.
Yes? Okay. So, and one of the issues with this, of course, is you have to talk Union Pacific and a couple of other railroads into let you do this, and then charging you whatever they want for you to be able to use their right-of-way. And most of them, there's just no room. You know, there's no room. The freight is going up all the time. Freight traffic is kind of a problem. And there just isn't likely to have those railroads say, oh, sure, let's just have passengers going all day. So we think we should be looking at this system, which is the system that created all these job centers, the highway system, that now serves to move everybody in and out of all those centers all day long. And, you know, does so pretty well. It succeeds. The problem is the capacity of these arterials is getting strained. So how do you get more capacity into the same right-of-way?
Almost all of the major job centers, activity centers, are on the freeway system.
That's what I just said, yeah. That's the point. That's why they're there. Because the freeway went to them, created an intersection where you can start creating jobs. And so, if you just use that system, this is kind of the base network you would do. You know, this is all inside the Metro service area, so Metro could do this. Of course, TxDOT and Harris County own all that land, all that right-of-way, so you know. But still, it's a pretty small system, and it's relatively inexpensive, I think, compared to other things we've been talking about.
Is the Metro service area the white area there?
Yes, yes. I think. These different colors mean there is already some kind of bus service in each of those areas, except for this little piece of the Beltway, which has no HOV lines, so no bus. But you know, this out here is be very simple to take one more step and give one of each of those managed lanes, or leave it alone for years, but ultimately to dedicate a lane to transit buses. And you'd be there, you know, in a minute for about I-10. Others are not so good. We have one-way HOV lanes all over the place. This up here, of course, is the Woodlands, a private express company, but still it's being used in the HOV lanes. And so getting these things to be a little wider and to deal with that is obviously going to take some money. But compared to all the other options we have on the table, it's, I think, peanuts. And if you want to be really regional and get to all the top 25, of course you could be talking about 30 or 50 job centers and get Sugar Land and some other things too. But just to say 25, it would be that system, which is a lot bigger, and now it begins to have problems because there's no transit facilities in the Beltway and there's no transit facilities other than just driving along the street up on 1960. And so, by the way, are those job centers you mentioned, they come back on just so you can say, well, they need service, so we put them back. So that's the big system.
Those dark blue lines are HOV bus service?
No, the dark blue lines there's no bus service there at all now.
Okay,
Everything else has some kind of bus
so they would be bus service, is
Right.
what you're saying?
Well, I mean, how do you insert, a two-way HOV system in the middle of the Beltway? Is Harris County going to say sure? Probably not.
But can I say just very clear, what I'm advocating for is to make our current HOV bus system into a BRT system, which means give buses priority. So you would do congestion pricing and things to give buses priority, and adding a bunch of entrance and exit ramps. The real problem right now for Greenway or for Uptown is the entrance and exit ramps from the HOV. But intending to have very fast bus service down the middle of the freeways is the idea.
But it isn't that hard, even at greenways. You look at the map for a while, you can see ways in. And it's right, there may be the need for more flyovers. But, most of these places are kind of getting some kind of service already. And I'm not saying, I wouldn't suggest that these buses are providing anything other than basically express service between the centers. In other words, they're not going to stop along the way and drop a lot of people off. They're just going. Yes.
Well,
And by the way, I'm happy to talk as we go. We don't have to wait till the end.
Metro already has about 20 transit centers. Not all of them are along the freeways, but when I've looked at putting express buses on the freeway, and about every 2 to 4 miles, you've got either a park and ride lot or a transit center that the bus could stop and pick up additional along the freeway corridors.
Yeah, so if you go further and talk about Sam's circulator system, you get out to, say, the energy corridor, and you get off at that parking ride with the bus, and there's something there. And
Then you've got local buses that
they already have a local bus service in the energy corridor, so it'd be a piece of cake. Actually, it goes to that very spot, so it's done. It's already there. And this is like older, this is the 2005, what we call activity, I think this is activity intensity or just population? I think it's activity intensity, which is population plus jobs on this 1 mile grid. And so you can see that this system gets into almost everything, except maybe not enough over here. There's work to be thinking about. But this is just a check on the idea that this is actually getting most of the things we worry about. So this is how the energy corridor is looking at its future. This is from their master plan. And they get it that they're going to have 2 cities, one on each side of the freeway. And both of them getting pretty big. This one on the south side of the freeway probably will be the biggest and will be a relatively massive place. You got to get it that 7 of these places, arguably 8, each have more jobs than downtown San Diego or downtown Miami, or most of the downtowns in the United States. They are big cities in their own right. The downtown is not the only city we have. And so all these places are developing independently. They all have management districts. They all have plans to become much more urban. And this one this is already in place. This is their idea for connecting the two. It's a pedestrian bridge that has stuff on it. So it's got, bars, and see, why not go sit out there at a bar and watch the traffic and so but, if it's just a long bridge, people are like any downtown long block where it's all brick or something, nobody wants to walk it. But if you put stuff along the way, especially bars, people in coffee shops, people will use it, you know.
One time you can cross the
And they see the place, oh, well, okay, this is their idea. This is a light rail vehicle up on I-10, where people are getting off. This is the early pedestrian bridge, which was just a skyway. And then they can catch this bus, which takes them to wherever, and, oh, that's the local bus. And then right behind here would be is the parking lot for the park and ride. And the original picture, I don't know how I lost that, but had lots of people on bikes. So there's one right over there. Because Clark Martinson was the director over there, who loves bikes. So I mean, that's how they're thinking out there. Is this sort of way we're suggesting, do that. And then it would look like this. You know, I don't think we have any place in Houston that looks like that. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know what it would be. The Midtown, post-Midtown could easily look like that, but every time I go, there's just not a lot of people. I don't understand what that's about, but there you go. But that's what they see the energy corridor looking like. And when they did this master plan, they had this huge public thing where they showed people lots of pictures of stuff and got their sort of feeling for what they liked. So of all the vehicles they showed, this was the one that scored the highest. 50% like this vehicle the best. It's something from Europe. I don't know what vehicle it is. And the lowest scoring one was this, 6%. That's what we have. I think it's a problem that we don't have any design sense at Metro. I mean, you know, people around the world are using the slickest things you ever saw in your life. They're using Mercedes buses in San Francisco. You know, I mean, we can do better than this, I think, I hope. And I
Is that
know
style or is it design? More style.
both of those things. I mean, these buses ought to feel as good to ride in as a light rail vehicle. And they ought to have Wi-Fi, and they ought to have no signs on the door that say no coffee. Yes.
There are, I think Portland has the exact same light rail vehicles as us,
Right.
but the colors that it's painted on the inside are much smarter. It makes it's weird the way the colors of the railings and the way everything's colored makes it a much more pleasant vehicle, and it's the same vehicle we have.
It's exactly the
So
same
they
vehicle.
don't have the stupid advertising on the outside.
The advertising's good.
Or do they?
Well, but I don't know if the light rail vehicles do, because they're white. They look like ice cream cones. They're solid white. They're fantastic when they go down the street. You know? How hard is that? What do? We said, okay, we're going to finally put some light rail on the ground. And it's going to be this rocket, space city kind of stuff. And let's paint them, how about gray? You know, just so nobody will object. Right? I was so excited when they covered that one car with the stop thing, whatever it was, and it was red. I mean, those were red light rail cars. They were cool.
But we got a lot of flack on that too.
A lot of what? You got flack about that? Yeah, but that was for putting words on it, right? For putting, is that what the flack was about?
I mean, it was supposed to be a safety feature, you know, talk about safety, but you know, we did get some criticism behind that. And then when you started to see.
It wasn't because it was red, was it? It was because it was you were starting to draw attention
Yeah.
to signs. Scenic Houston doesn't want any
Yeah,
signs in Houston.
you know, Metro or, let's say the powers that be wanted to be a seamless transportation.
Yeah. And I don't know how we ever get past that. So this is the Southwest Freeway. So this is the kind of stuff we have. So this bus has about 40, 42, 44 something people on it. All these cars have 42 or 44 people. So that's what capacity is all about. And this bus, it looks to me like this space wouldn't take much to make that a two-way space. This is Istanbul. These are Mercedes buses, and they're double-length buses, and they carry around 200 people. And these buses, these 4 buses you can see, have twice as many people in them as all the cars you can see in the picture. I don't know what else there is to know about freeway capacity and how to get more out of it. Oh yeah, and there's 700,000 people a day boarding carried in this system. That's a pretty much bigger city than Houston is, but that seems to work.
Question.
Yes,
Do they measure the pollution?
I'll get to that in a second. But the pollution, most of these buses are getting really clean. The pollution of the buses is nothing compared to the pollution of the cars relative to Houston. But it gets even better than that. This is the big one. This is Bogota. This was the sort of this, I guess, the gold standard. People talk about this all the time. So they act like light rail vehicles. You know, you're standing on the platform. You've already paid for your ticket. There's lots of doors in the side of the bus. The doors open. You get on. They close. You go. 15 or 20 seconds or whatever it takes to get everybody into the car. And you get this kind of stuff going on all the time. And all this is obviously rush hour one way because there's nobody over here. So, you know, this is probably, even with all that crowding, a better way to go. And I hear all the time that, well, you know, we don't want to have any transit that really works because then there's too many people on it, you know. What? It's like, Yogi Berra said nobody goes to that restaurant anymore because it's too crowded. That doesn't work out quite. And then Curitiba, which was the first one in Brazil. Is that right?
In the world.
Curitiba's not in Brazil, is it?
Yes,
Yes,
in Brazil.
And so this was one of those things you can only do under circumstances where a junta takes over the country and appoints the mayor, and the mayor happens to be a really talented, creative architect who has total power to do whatever he wants. So he did this and changed the city that had, at that time, it's a little smaller than Houston, but at that time, I want to say they had the same number of cars in the city as we have. Now, not so much. Now everybody uses this. 2 million riders a day on this system right here, which is really simple. It's a little, see this little tube right here? It's a little tube that's closed from the elements, and it works just the same as the light rail. You see these little paths over here, and when the doors open, you get on them, so forth. You know? And they're really fast. Pushing along. So this gets to this next question. This is a fuel cell bus. And there are now around 400 of these out in the world, most of them in Europe. Actually, the biggest group is in a little town called Whistler, Canada. Why? I don't know that. But they're operating. And this is in London, and this is operating. I think London now has around 200 that they're testing. They've been testing for a pretty long time. No emissions, right? And not only no emissions, but not a vehicle that's getting plugged in at night in order to receive its electricity from a power plant that's emitting a lot. This is fuel cells. The waste product of this is little drops of water, pure water. And this is kind of interesting. This is 10 years, 1 year of the stock of Ballard Power Systems that makes the fuel cells for these buses. That's what happened. People are getting it. This is coming really fast, really, really fast. And I own some. This is what happened this week. It's scary almost. Is the bubble going to pop here? Well, I can sell it. I've owned this stuff for 10 years, and I just last week got back to par. Because it went, yeah, like that for a really long time. So I think it's going to go up much higher. But the point is, people think this is going to happen. Who is doing an electric car in 2015? Ford. Who said they're going to produce 10,000 or 20,000 fuel cell cars in 2015? 1 year from now. So, off the charts. So maybe we get these things. And maybe we also, this idea of driverless cars. Have you all heard about that concept? Other people call them autonomous cars, which means not only do you not need to have the driver sitting in the driver's seat. The car, after dropping off its passenger, could go somewhere else and get somebody else. Could drive around the city all day picking people up and doing that kind of work. And why not? And people say, oh no, that's going to be horrible for transit because, because now we don't need it. Well, no, you can do the same thing with buses. You can have these buses apparently 10 seconds apart. And they'll never touch each other. And they won't have drivers. And so I don't know how far off that is, but it's a very interesting idea because suddenly the capacity of a bus lane gets to be enormous. And of course, as much as any train can involve. So this is just for fun. When we think about these activity centers, I think we're not quite getting at what's possible out there. This is Greens Point Mall, which is at the corner, the intersection of 45 and the Belt. So Greens Point is most of it, what we think of as the office areas back here. This is that Wyndham Hotel. And it's planned on the, this will probably never happen, but on Metro's plan, there is a light rail station on this road, on this street, in front of this beautiful hotel. I'm obsessed with this hotel. The inside of it, have everybody been there? You know, the lobby was copied from Victoria Station, you know, a wonderful train station in London. So it's a train station in my mind. And we're talking about this high-speed train coming. A lot of talk has been had about having one of the stations be over here, so that then you can get something that takes you to the airport from there. So well, people are talking about we got to redesign this mall then, and all the redesigns I've seen done for it in 15 years are still a mall. They move they don't really move the buildings. They start putting a few more in. They get some green space. They put a water feature in. They make a little walk, but it's still horrible. It's it's just a mall, and everything's separate, and it doesn't work, and you're wasting the space. So why wouldn't we do that? You know, that's Paris at the same scale. So coming out of this hotel, you're in heaven, right? You've got the best stuff in the world. Lots of people live there. Lots of people work there. It has its own little system. It's very efficient. Way more jobs than could be held at that mall, or DuPont Circle in Washington, something like that. So going a little closer, and this is all really getting goofy because I just started doing this a couple of days ago. This area here, which has all this contiguous green space, which I'm calling the urban zone, and I've been using this term zone to mean, I remember being struck when I first got to college and I went and lived in Manhattan, that we got on a train, went down into a subway in our neighborhood, which is a pretty cool neighborhood, our Madison neighborhood, and then came up somewhere else into another cool neighborhood, and it really didn't matter what happened in between those places, because you couldn't see them, they weren't there, could have been farms, could have been anything. So the point is that these nodes in our networks are where we live and play and have fun and all that stuff. So the nodes are everything. And so the zone can include places that are here and there and so forth, as long as they're connected by this system, right? By that. So that's it. That's the closest inland. All that's left out now is the Woodlands, NASA Clear Lake, and Galveston. And what would you do there? That's New York City again. That's the light rail system. That's the minimum system that would just serve the urban zone. And the only thing that's left off of that that's in the metro system is Clear Lake. So that doesn't look like a big system to me. This can already This can already accommodate that. This cannot, obviously, but these could soon, if we're rebuilding this right now, we're rebuilding this right now. Are we accommodating transit in these new rebuilds? No. Nobody's no. We're just, have we built, is there transit in the Grand Parkway? No. Is there in the new Prairie Parkway they're trying to build beyond that? No transit. But this is all possible. This is all pretty possible. And again, it's all in the Metro service area. Again, it's all in the city of Houston. It could do this. This is sort of interesting. I don't know that I have this lined up quite right, but this is a new map we've been seeing that shows the carbon footprint per capita everywhere in the country. And so this dark green is very light carbon footprint, and red is very heavy carbon emissions. And you're probably not surprised. I mean, I was a little surprised at how clear it all was, and how it sort of gets worse as you go west, but still. But these are the places we should be expanding in. These are the places because they already are safer in terms of carbon emissions and climate change and so forth. And I don't know if they get denser, does the footprint go down? I think it goes down, because it's a per capita thing. So that's just a fun thing to think about. And then there's this idea of the crosstown connection. So I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And I used to show this to people along in the Buffalo Bayou, and they've we stopped showing it because it was just so offensive. But you know, that line right there, how do we connect this place to this place? You know, we're not going to do the university line anytime soon. So what are we going to do? If Uptown's going to have its own system there, all of a sudden you're saying, oh, okay, that's fine. Let Uptown have its system that connects it to I-10 and to 59, and gradually, and then connects it to the energy corridor, and gradually the whole center of focus moves west to there, and then beyond, perhaps. And people tell me there's no one in our region smart enough to have thought of that and is strategically doing it, but I don't think I believe that, because it looks like that's what's happening. So, Janet, you probably know what this is. This is the monorail system we were going to build in Houston. That's it going over Uptown, over the loop. And we got pretty close to doing that system. But no cigar. That was what it looked like. And what's interesting about it to me, has always been interesting about monorail, is how small this footprint is. You know, there are pictures of, you go to monorail.org or whatever it is, and you see pictures of these big, substantial, heavy rail kind of looking monorails, big things, up in the air, on two of them, on a column that's 6 feet wide. You know, so that's the right of way that is 6 feet in the middle of a freeway. I did that a long time ago. That's my office right there. Thinking, you know, if we're going to do something on Richmond, well, let's do that. You know, wouldn't that be fun to do that? But Memorial Drive would look like that. Same kind of thing, right down the median. You know? And so you could, in fact, have that kind of a ride. And the only person who would ever thought of doing something like that was Walt Disney, who got it. This transit system he built for Disney World and Disneyland wasn't just moving people around. It was a ride. You know, it's something you wanted to do. So it was monorail. That would be an incredible ride right down the edge of the line. Oops, I feel like I missed it. Oh, well, I did. Point is, map I didn't put in here was showing that whole Memorial Drive stretch on a Google map with the connector, which is very simple to make, to the Uptown line going up and down Post Oak and coming off the freeway in the same way. And then connecting at the other end downtown at Capitol or Rusk, where the light rail line will end, going west. Something going further, but I mean, how hard to do that, except for the feeling that somehow we shouldn't have a big infrastructure thing in the middle of Memorial Park, Memorial Drive. Okay, to have a zillion cars every day, and to have to use a quarter of the space for parking for golf and so on. Not okay to deliver people out there quickly without cars. And I don't understand that. So I think that's it. This is only, you know, a lot of people worked on this. This was the Dream Network. That's all inside the metro service area. Hard to understand because you don't see the geography. But Christoph Spieler and who else worked in it? Jay worked on it. Bob Urey downtown. We had a retreat out at our farm a couple of times and hammered this thing out. So this is the detail of it. You know, this is how you might actually do it. I haven't studied enough to know if this is the same thing I've been showing you, but I think it is. This also has light rail and a whole bunch of other stuff happening. So this is sort of what we're putting forward. Two things. One is we've got to start looking at the region differently, because it doesn't look like we think it looks. The people aren't where we think they are, and certainly the jobs aren't where we think they are. And secondarily, we've got to solve this transportation problem, and it's not going to be solved by making highways wider. We are now starting to bite the economy on both sides of these highways by taking, I think, on 290, 175 businesses fighting with that stuff. What's the point of that? To move the winter further out. You know, when do we stop saying that? So, or if we're talking about Woodland Heights and 45 and taking out neighborhoods to make things wider. You know, we have to take my personal position is we shouldn't widen anything. We have the right of way. We should just do better the way we use the capacity, whatever that turns out. So, I'm finished. And I really want to be challenged on this, because next week I'm going to present this to the Greater Houston Partnership. And who knows what the challenges will be there. So.
Well, the first challenge is most of it is, except for the little bit of overhead, is that grade. So you're competing with existing traffic unless you, like you say, segregate it, which means you have competed with it and taken over.
You say competing with the cars on the freeway.
All of them are essentially at grade except for the overhead example at the end. So and the growth is along the existing right of way, but you don't necessarily have to use them and compete with them in order, just because, I mean, they exist, obviously, you don't have the acquisition and right of way cost issue, but to some degree it's a zero-sum game that you're changing the proportions.
And I would argue that I've gone so far past thinking that we in the Houston region are going to scare up $20 or $50 billion to start building subways and elevators and stuff. We're not going to do that. Anybody think we're going to do that? I mean, we can't build the university at grade, let alone build it as a subway. But I
do it if we go for it.
What?
They built the King Freeway expansion with money we don't have.
Well, that's the
The
road
money
guys.
is there, it's a matter of getting it. We have to be aggressive and go for it.
The money is there, although the state constitution says, no, you can't do that.
Piece of paper can change it.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Well, so just one thing about subways is you can build, I think, like 12 miles of light rail, dedicated light rail with 1 mile of subway expense. So if we did do that and we did start spending balanced money in transportation in the Houston region, we still shouldn't build subways. We still should build high quality light rail like we're doing. And then my other point about the zero-sum game is it's not a zero-sum game, because one that we saw in the picture is one bus taking an entire lane carries a lot more people than all those cars in the very efficient subsidized network of cars.
Well, the surface real estate is zero-sum.
No, it's
Unless
not.
you
I mean,
pave the world.
It's not a zero-sum game, because if you trade out 50 cars for one bus, you're using a lot less space for that bus.
If you take that over.
Well,
But you're,
the bus runs on a road.
Yeah.
yeah, but a lot more humans get to use that road, and so it's not the current, the silly idea that we can't take lanes to do light rail is actually saying less humans should have access to that public infrastructure.
Yeah, it
Less
takes this
people should get
complete
to use it.
streets idea. I mean, you have to use that everywhere. You have to use the complete streets concept, safe and available for all users on the freeways too. And there's nothing that says that gigantic thing going out 10 is only for cars and trucks.
Well, maybe I missed it. Are you talking about making all this as a rail system? Are you
No.
talking about making it a bus transit?
Well, the first thing I'm saying is this is the right of way. Okay, it could be rail, could be monorail, could be elevated on it, could be anything. Personally, I think it has to be buses because we could start doing it tomorrow afternoon. The rest of it is who knows. Yes, sir.
Well, you said that the trips were from point center to point center, but most of the trips in town are going to be from residents to the point center to some other business and back home, and in those mixed combinations.
Right.
So I challenge your thought that there would not be stops in between, and that I think you need to have stops in between as you're going down in order to pick up the ridership. Because those are the businesses people want to get to, that's where people live. You gotta get to the Lee's, the office, to the stores and back to the living neighborhoods. And that's a complete trip. And so, and I like your idea of cost utilization, but I think that if there is so far of your explanation, then you really seal, that's what
It's the, and people challenge this whole idea that connecting job centers provides transit service. If you look at Dallas, Phoenix, Denver, everybody who did light rail before we did, they all started by going from downtown to some suburban space. And they kept doing that. Now I don't know if this is how soon this gets to be true, but we will probably have approximately the same ridership as Dallas does in about 5 years. But we'll have 25 miles and they'll have 100 miles, and they will have spent many more billions of dollars than that. Because it works to connect centers. So when you're over here, if you live out, it's interesting because one of the points we're making is that a lot of people don't live far away. Huge numbers of people live inside this orange thing. Almost everybody. In other words, enough people to worry about. So, for many people, if you start with saying, let's talk about the people who live closest to jobs already, and the people most likely to want to use these services, and most likely to want to live in these urban spaces, and serve them because they're saving us time and money and emissions and everything else, then you'll have an efficient system that works. It doesn't answer the question, though, of how do I get from Cape to Woodruff. But you can say now that if we already have bus service out at Katy, right at the edge, parking lot system, that gets you to the energy corridor, gets you anywhere. But once you're in that system, then you can use it. In other words, you drive from however far out you chose to live. You know there's never going to be transit service. It can't be because you chose to live in an inefficient place. Then you can drive to the edge where the system begins and use it to go anywhere. And then you're right that there has to be on the ground something else for moving locally. And we have a very large local bus system, which we are now about to change into a system that we hope is much more rational about how it works and serves more people.
I would say,
I think
there are areas in that west side that don't have any local bus service.
The areas that chose not to have local bus service?
No, it's in Metro's area, but Metro doesn't go there.
But like the Memorial Villages that always advocate
Well,
not to
I'm
have.
focused on that 290 job center, because that's my management.
Okay.
There's a bus on Tidwell that you can get across town. The bus on New York doesn't go as far as Bingham. There's no bus service on North Houston, Rouse, and Bingham.
So have you been paying attention to the Metro reimagining?
Yeah.
So would some of those maps better satisfy what you're talking about?
We hope, but it's
Are you talking about out here?
Yeah, that last job center on 290 is in my management.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
After that, in spite of what people think, there's not much
There's no.
relative to the stuff in the.
Yeah, and the Pinemont Park and Ride is being closed, there's no local bus service, never has been any local bus service, so you had to drive to it, so
Well,
it didn't connect to anything else.
And I completely agree with you. We have to hope that this reimagining actually produces something more
Yes,
rational,
yeah,
where people get it that they can use it now.
yeah.
What accommodations are you making in your planning for bicycle transit at the end of your? Right
So-
now, those ugly Metro buses will at least carry 2 bikes. In Seattle, it carries 3. Every bus is set to carry 3 bikes, and if it's not crowded, you can take one off. In Houston, if your 2 bikes are full, it doesn't matter if you're the 4th person on the bus, the driver doesn't let the bike on. And for those of us who choose not to own a car, I'm not walking 4 miles to catch my bus, but I can bike 4 miles to catch my bus.
So I'll say a couple of things about that. I'll say something and then I'll negate myself. One is that we spend a lot of time at Houston tomorrow, because we're very small, saying we can't get into the weeds. We can only talk big picture. That's all we can do, because there's not enough of us. But then we get into the weeds doing the complete street stuff and spend 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is doing that, which has turned out to be, and I would have argued 5 years ago, bikes are never going to happen. Well, I was dead wrong. Bikes are really happening faster, and they are a huge piece of a transit network.
And they are an essential piece.
So, problem has to be solved, is all I can say. I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I read it, and I know what Metro is saying about it, but and I don't know
How
how
often
it gets
do you take the bus to get wherever you're going?
Never. Well,
Why?
approximately.
Why?
Because I live in the Montrose and,
There are buses in the
but I
Montrose.
they don't go where I go. That's what everybody, now maybe that will change with this reimagining, you know, I hope so.
Where in the Montrose?
Where? Harold Street off of Mandel, where the streetcar used to be.
You're not far from the Westheimer bus. There
Right,
are three
which is
buses.
not
You're
helpful
not
to
far
me.
from the Alabama bus. You're close to the 26-7. You're close to the 34. And those will
I'm
connect
embarrassed
you
by
to
this.
everything.
I have to say, the fact that our mayor takes money away from Metro to fix the streets and then doesn't do it means that those buses running up and down Westheimer and Richmond aren't gonna last however, they're just being pounded to jelly. I think they're frightening to ride on. They rattle, they bang, they sound, I mean, they're just falling apart, you know? So the other thing is,
Well,
I drive a
that's probably the
Prius.
Same way, because it's the same problem.
I drive a Prius, so I get to have that holier than thou thing already because of my.
Hey, my bicycle is 15 years old.
My Prius will be
That's
50.
right. Plus, it saves me a gym membership.
I mean, you've said a lot of interesting things. You're very focused on looking at the activity centers, to make it part of